But right now, Phillies Mailbag, it's open. Frank Klose is here. He's answering your Phillies Mailbag questions. I'm sure this year the Mailbag questions have been quite interesting. Frank, how are you, pal?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
All is well. The Phillies win again last night. We opened up the show asking this question. Frank, I'll throw it out to you before we get into some mailbag questions. But how much winning do you think it will take for the fans to kind of ease up on Gabe Kapler?
I would say they starting to now. It really only takes to win a couple times, and that's their most recent memory. So I think sometimes fans go by what their most recent memory is, and if they keep winning, I don't think we need to worry.
All right. Well, let's hope they keep winning. Let's dive into the mailbag question here. Rob wants to know, the Phillies did not need to sign Carlos Santana. Don't you think Nick Williams needs to play? Kind of about the logjam they have in that outfit. Do you think they didn't need Carlos Santana?
Well, when we went into this offseason, you and I talked about what the Phillies might need going into this season. And the one thing that I really identified all along was they really needed somebody who was an impact bat that could bat from the left side. Now, Nick Williams is a left-handed bat, but he's a rookie, in a lot of respects not established. And Carlos Santana is somebody with a tremendous track record in the major leagues who, by the way, is not only left-handed, he's a switch hitter. So he can give the Phillies some at-bats from the right side as well. So I thought that he was a really brilliant sign for the Phillies. Now, the one caveat is that Rhys Hoskins is now an everyday left fielder. And although Odubel Herrera, Nick Williams, and Aaron Altair, one of them is not going to start unless, of course, either Santana or Hoskins has a day off. But I particularly like the depth that this has created, even though someone like Nick Williams would be a little upset. Now, he made some comments that he kind of, got a lot of attention made of, where he said, I guess the computer picked the lineup, referring to his manager. But the two of them supposedly had a heart-to-heart, worked all that out. But the fact that the Phillies have quality players that come in and fill in is a great advantage to have. Now, think about a lot of the former types of extra men on the bench that the Phillies have had over the years. You're talking Russ Glode. You're talking Lance Nix. Last year, Daniel Nava, right? So it kind of the idea has been they've carried sort of a journeyman veteran to get those starts when somebody is out of the lineup. Well, now the Phillies are in a situation where they have somebody who can give them quality at-bats that has a tremendous amount of talent, and those at-bats are going to be much better than if it was one of those veteran types that signs a minor league deal every single spring, it seems. So the Phillies have given themselves a lot of depth. Having Nick Williams come off the bench last night in the eighth inning and hitting basically the decisive home run, maybe you don't get that from one of those types of bench players. So it's on the surface, it does become frustrating to some players because everybody should want to play if you're a major leaguer, and it should provide some frustration to fans that like those players. But having that depth makes the Phillies a much, much, much better team, and I think already we've kind of seen that come together nicely.
So, Frank, speaking of the depth and the lineup, Steven's biggest issue with the lineup is there isn't any consistency to it. He wants to know, how can guys get in a rhythm when that lineup's changing so much?
Well, I would tend to argue that the core of the lineup is rather consistent, and I think that already we can kind of tell who's going to play when. So far, Cesar Hernandez has started every game, and he's batted leadoff. Batting second has been Carlos Santana every time. And, one of the approaches of this new look lineup, and we've talked about it before, kind of the changing of the two-hole hitter from the make a productive out and move the runner over to, your leadoff hitter is going to get on base, and then the guy behind him is going to have an impact at bat and drive him in. And I think so far we've seen that with Cesar Hernandez and Carlos Santana. And then behind him, you have another on-base type player. It's mostly been Odubel Herrera, although his days off, it's been somebody else. And then behind him is Rhys Hoskins, who gives you the high quality at bat and drives a lot of runs in. So 1 through 4 have been pretty standard. Beyond that, yeah, I realize it's been jumbled a little bit. The catching situation. Now, every team, the catchers, go back and forth. And since Andrew Knapp can bat left-handed, it seems like he's going to play against some of the tough right-handed hitters. And J.P. Crawford and Scott Kingery, they're going to, it seems like, be in a platoon at shortstop, and Kingery's going to face the lefties on the mound, and Crawford's going to start the other days, and Kingery will get his at-bats elsewhere. And I think Kingery is a versatile enough player, and whoever's not playing in terms of Altair and Williams are versatile enough players that you can slot them in wherever they need to be for the day, and that lineup functions the way that it's supposed to. And I would actually argue that this lineup, especially in the last week, has really functioned the way it was supposed to. Now, if you went down to the batting averages after the first couple series, pretty much all of your key guys, except for Kingery and Hoskins, were all batting in the 100s. Here, you see that they had a little bit more time to catch their groove, and they're all thriving. And even Mike Calfranco is thriving. So I think the lineup works pretty well. Might there be a few instances where somebody, isn't swinging the bat as many times as they would like Nick Williams that we just talked about? I think that'll happen, but I think one of the things you need to do to be in the major league is be ready to step up and take your at-bats when your name's called, and hopefully they'll adapt to do that. But they have a lot of offensive depth, and that's something that a lot of teams would be I'm sure would love to have.
Frank Klose with us, Phillies Mailbag Open. Tonight's lineup is out. It's Hernandez, Santana, Herrera, Hoskins, Williams, Kingery, Alfaro, Crawford, and Nola in the 9th spot. So we've got the Mailbag Open, Frank, and Gabe Kapler. Mike wants to know if his stock has improved at all this week.
Not this Mike, a different Mike.
Yeah, so I would argue that yes, it has. The big blunder that everybody is pointing to is the mistake that Kapler owned. Grabbing, calling for Hobie Milner, even though he's still sitting in the bullpen with his jacket on, right? And that was the one thing that was kind of way off base. However, when you look at how things have gone the last week, that lineup that we were just talking about a minute ago as kind of working, that's his construction. And really some of the things that he got blamed for were related to the bullpen. And as I said back then, and I'll say it again, the Phillies are without 3 key relievers in Mark Leiter Jr., Tommy Hunter, and Pat Neshek. Without those guys, when Vince Velasquez only innings, you're going to have a disaster on your hands. And thankfully, in the last week, Vince Velasquez gave them 6. Even though Ben Lively kind of struggled early last night, he gave them 6. And they knew going in that the bullpen would have to work a lot on Jake Arrieta's first start of the season because he's not that stretched out yet. And, when that's the only time you have to do it, things look a lot better. And really, you can't really stress enough the impact a starter getting removed in the 3rd inning is going to have on your team for days. And because they're getting that consistent starting pitching, the bullpen is starting to kind of figure things out in the wake of losing 3 of their relievers. It's kind of coming together, and when that all comes together, the manager is going to look a lot better.
Hey, Frank, couple quick notes before we let you roll here. Always send Frank a question at Frank Klose on Twitter for the mailbag. He'll answer your questions. We saw Scott Kingery with his first career home run last night. So a couple of things. We also saw Nick Williams with his first ever pinch hit home run. But one thing I want to ask about is the bullpen and Hector Neris. He's converted each of his last 21 saves going back to June 28th of last year. He's got a 1.31 ERA, 29 strikeouts in those 21 save situations. Has Neris clearly become the Phillies closer?
That's a tough one. I tend to think that the Phillies will go bigger when they're ready to win. I would keep an eye on the likes of Craig Kimbrell out there, who could be had as a free agent perhaps if he doesn't re-sign with the Boston Red Sox. I would not be shocked if they go bigger there when it's time. But for now, I think they're committed to giving him the ball right now. I mean, what other alternatives do they really have? And right now, there's really few closer type names to look at, and I think we learned when he had the 8th inning, Hector Neris was very, very effective. When he first got the 9th inning, he was not effective. And if he can work past those ninth inning jitters, for lack of a better word, perhaps they'll have something there. So I think with this year being what it is, it's still kind of a let's find out kind of year. We talked about them finding out the likes of Edkoff and Velasquez. Well, this is a let's find out type situation for Hector Neris too. So he's going to have every opportunity this year, and they still might go bigger in the end if they have the opportunity. But he's going to get the ball for the rest of the year, I believe, unless it's totally disastrous. But as you said, there's no sign that he's been disastrous as of late.
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, at Frank Klose with a K. He's here on the Sports Bash with the Phillies Mailbag. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, guys.